Welcome to the Satanic Panic Hour. We're your hosts, Beelzebub and Asmodeus. Tonight we're going to be talking about plague, famine, human sacrifice, and a pretty good pancake recipe from one of our guest chefs.
You have officially lost your effing mind. That was
Welcome to Lawfully Chaotic's Halloween edition. The most low-effort Halloween costume on the planet.
No, I think this is pretty low effort. Just wearing a Haunted Mansion t-shirt.
Yeah,
Come on now.
Yep, you win. Welcome, episode 32 of Lawfully Chaotic. This is our before Halloween special. Kind of wishing now that I actually came up with a better costume, but oh well. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about the horror theme in gaming, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's been
we
a week.
Talked about it yesterday.
I know. It's been a week. How are you doing?
It's been a week.
Exactly. It's going to be
a lot going on. I'm trying to set up my schedule for the holidays, trying to, a lot of games are going to slow down right now because of everybody taking breaks and, that kind of slow period that reminds you that's why you have a savings account.
with a padlock on it.
Yep, with a padlock on it. Because we're going to, I'm going to shut the studio down for November for like a 5-6 day in November, and then obviously I'm shutting it down for about 8 or 9 days in December,
right?
To for the purposes of we're traveling up to visit Calissa's father up in Vancouver. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know he lived up in Vancouver.
Yeah, he's up in Washington. Awesome little house, like literally almost downtown Vancouver. It's
we were up there. Huh? We were up there in April. I was up there in April for the first time. 4 days on Victoria
I can't
Island.
wait in spring. Like I'd like to go up in spring.
Same, because it was just gorgeous. I really want to go back, but I want to go back when everything.
Winter, it's gloomy. It's kind of gloomy in wintertime. So
yeah, but I mean, it's gloomy here in Chicago too, to be honest. So
no, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
But it was just I have never seen so much lush green. Yeah. In all my life, everywhere.
Pretty crazy,
oh my God.
Right?
Yeah, like every.
And I mean, it rains so much; it should be green all the time.
Yeah. I'm guessing anywhere around the Great Lakes is pretty much the same, just gray, blah.
Yeah. Blah. Blah. I want to suck your blood.
I do this accent, and I sound like Guru. Oh no, my tooth fell out. Oh shit! The fucking vampire fairy's gonna come. Oh fuck! That's gonna put a damper on tonight's work. God damn it!
The tooth fell off.
You know what a crown costs from my dentist in Transylvania?
Oh, that was a real crown that just popped out?
No, it's my vampire tooth.
Oh, your vampire tooth. I was going to say, that'd be sad if it was a real crown.
I wouldn't be making light of it as a real crown. Son of a fuck!
Oh, bitch, that's $1,500. God damn it.
Yeah, basically. Actually, it's not a bad idea. Next time I get a crown, maybe I'll get a couple of fangs.
Have some porcelain fangs made.
Yeah. Yep. Well, these are really cool. As long as we're talking Halloween, this is on topic. These are really cool. I found these somewhere. They're very realistic looking.
Yeah.
And you just use denture cream. You fill it, you stick it on. Yeah. And then it molds to your tooth, which is why they mostly stay on even without anything.
A lot of the hardcore cosplayers use those. The LARPers, cosplayers, they'll use those fangs.
And they're awesome because, I mean, they feel like regular teeth. You're not wearing this goopy.
It's almost like...
Remember those fucking fangs you used to get as children?
Natural.
Yeah.
Honey, come here. I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty, damn it. So every time you try to do the voice, they come out like bullets.
I'm going to bite the dog tonight. God. Oh my gosh,
dog. Have you ever done horror in your games before? Like,
I guess let's just get into it. That's a good segue. No, I was actually thinking about that today, and as much as I love the genre, I mean, I'm not obsessed with it, but it does appeal to me. I can't say that I've ever done it. I know I did have Vampire the Masquerade way back when it came out.
Yeah.
I don't know if our group, Gary would know once he gets on. I don't know if our group ever really delved into it. So I can't, to answer your question, I can't recall ever truly playing a horror RPG. Which
I did all the time with
me.
Cthulhu. I feel like Cthulhu is always the go-to in the conversation. Especially, I mean, the fun part about Cthulhu was always the madness system and lining up horror in front of people and see if they, suddenly are affected by the madness system. Even though I've run D&D for a long time, I never had an interest in running Tomb of Horrors, but I always enjoyed reading it. Like, I always thought it was an interesting read.
But Tomb of Horrors, though, that was just all traps and shit.
Right, but I mean, I always found it interesting. That's one of the few linked games, other than like Ravenloft, and then obviously when they did Strahd, that actually had the word horror in it. You know what I mean?
Okay. They never had it in Ravenloft.
Well, I mean, from a D&D module title perspective, I think their interpretation of Tomb of Horror.
Oh, you're literally saying Tomb of Horror.
Yeah, like it said horror. So for me, when I read it, I'm like, well, this isn't horrible. It's dangerous, but it's not horrible.
I think they were probably using like the 1886 rendition of the word horror, like
horror,
the horror
of it.
That man kicked the other one.
I could see her ankles. Yeah.
Tomb of ankles, Tomb of ankle socks.
But I did, from quite a lot, I would try to put horror themes in games. I'm always trying to make things gross and scary, and now that I'm playing Candela Obscura, we had a session today. It was kind of a creepy one. It was pretty interesting, to say the least.
That's funny. Now that you mention it, when I have DM'd way back in the past, and even now, it occurs to me that there is a recurring theme. Well, kind of two when I write modules. Cults, like a cult, not like Waco cults or
right.
Other
not legitimate cults, but
not legitimate cults. Occult.
The occult.
Not occult. Occult. Occult game. and undead. So I think inadvertently I always kind of wanted like a horror themed or kind of a horror leaning type campaign without even really knowing.
Yeah. Have you ever played in one?
No.
So I got to play in Vampire the Masquerade a few times, which I thought was fun.
Okay. I mean, that should have appealed to you way back when. That was kind of that was the forebearer of narrative play games.
Yeah, and I think it also was that kind of dabbling in the goth boy genre.
Yes,
not quite punk, but not quite emo goth or anything.
From that
from
game,
a culture perspective.
I should have dug it out. I know I have it. I still have the game, but that game came with it was a little like kind of IV bag. And it came with a whole bunch of those red stones for like blood. And it came with this little silver ankh talisman. I mean, they really did an awesome job.
That's nutty.
That game together.
Because see, I never ran Vampire the Masquerade. I was always fortunate enough to find a game to be in, and I always enjoyed being on the receiving end of the horror that was being kind of like called out. Now, when you're that age and that long ago, horror tends to be more, murder horror,
cerebral,
versus
hack and slash,
hack and slash.
It's like Halloween
psychological
versus,
horror.
Yeah, it's like Halloween versus Saw. basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Body horror, right.
Body horror versus
I don't
psychological horror.
I don't get into body horror at all. I think it's
I did when I was younger. Nowadays,
yeah.
it doesn't interest me that much.
I think it is disgusting and gratuitous, and there's enough shit these days that, like, I've never seen one of the Saw movies, and I never fucking will.
The Saw movies are pretty brutal. I watched the first one.
It's like, do you remember? It's like, remember when we were kids? We always used to talk about Faces of Death.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
It's the modern Faces of Death, and I've never seen a Faces of Death, and I never will, and I'm just not into that shit. And it's not the gore that I mind; it's the gratuitous, like, dismantling of the human body and those horrible. I don't even want to get into that. I prefer my horror to be more mainstream, like Nosferatu.
Well, I think sometimes when we think about horror in games, we almost always gravitate towards vampires. Like, it's almost always easy in any game just to go right towards
the king of the
vampire
king of the
theme.
Monsters. I think the vampire is that's interesting you say that. I think the king of the monster. You think that's Bela Lugosi's performance, or do you just think it's the romanticism of the archetype? I think vampire is the king of monsters.
Are they? I mean, I don't know if I would consider a vampire.
In terms of like pop cult, when you say, I guess if you say to somebody, first monster that pops to your mind. Godzilla.
I think, well, the first monster that pops to my mind is always going to be Frankenstein. I always feel like that's a really good representation,
okay.
Of a true monster, because
it's still a classic monster.
Fair, but it feels more monster than Dracula. Like, to me, obviously Dracula is a narrative on the monstrosity of humanity, whereas Frankenstein's a kind of narrative on how humanity builds its own monsters, and then creates those monsters. But I always like
and then treats them as such and becomes monsters themselves.
Correct.
Put on the Ritz!
But I always like the Frankenstein monster in D&D because it's a golem, it's a construct, it's an aberration, right? So you can go that way. Yeah, predatory.
Yeah, that's true.
The predatory monster.
Yeah,
for sure.
They're the closest to humans. I mean, I still want to be a vampire to this day. My whole life I want to be a vampire. The problem is I love sunny days too much.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know what my.
Although when you really at face value, you're like, oh, immortality, that's awesome. But then,
it isn't real immortality. They aren't immortal creatures. They do die. It just takes them forever to die. Like, it takes a long time to die.
Right.
Like, I mean, true immortal creatures are godlike creatures of immortality,
fair.
Right?
Fair.
But like, I'm a huge fan of zombies and the undead, that kind of horror. I love. Correct. They're immortal, but not eternal. Okay. That's a better way of putting it. Yeah, that is a much better way of putting it. But zombies
go ahead.
I like zombies because now they come in so many flavors because of horror. Like, I think horror has done a better job.
It's the Baskin Robbins of zombies.
Like, modern culture has taken the very kind of like unexciting idea of zombies, and turned them into, 28 days, 28 weeks, right?
28,
it's amazing. Hey, there's my brother. Hey, bro.
Oh, like your real brother?
Yeah, my real brother. He lives out in Huntington Beach.
Oh, sweet. Hey, brother.
Yeah. He's like, he hit me up on my Sunday night game. He's like, whoa, you stream? I go, yeah, on occasion.
You've only been doing it for 2 years. Thanks for joining us. But welcome. Please come in. Oh, fuck, again. Oh, no. It's always this. I have to see the dentist because this is really disgusting. I mean, I'm not gonna get any work done tonight later.
Which is a fun part about horror is the comedy aspect of horror now. I think one of the things that's been really interesting that's been very cultural.
Half vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah. This half.
Yeah. I love the way that we find horror funny now. Like
Well, here's
horror,
one for you. If you were going to saw a woman in half, would you saw her vertically or horizontally? Or anyone? I don't want to be sexist. If you're going to saw somebody in half.
If I'm going to saw anyone in half,
well, I think it's like
if I saw somebody in half, I'm going to do it vertically.
Ooh,
so that I could sell the two bodies parts to Vegas. You know, they can put it on display like at that body museum. So at least I could get some money out of it. Diagonally, there's diagonally.
You're fucked up. That makes me actually worried. Like that you wouldn't cut a body in half like a normal person.
My brother's like, you're gonna have trouble vertically. The easiest way to go is like straight across.
That's what I mean. Like, who the fuck wouldn't do that? Whatever, dude. You got issues. Okay, I'm gonna continue to cut people in half this way, like it's supposed to be done. All right.
I identify horizontally, not vertically. Thank you.
Comedy and horror. Spiral Cut. Oh my god, that's horrendous. Oh, like Thanos did to Drax, and he turned him into ribbons. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah, I remember that one. The reality
start at the head, they die faster vertically.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't either. I was going to comment, and then I'm like, nah.
Well, I mean, somebody brought up Shaun of the Dead. I love that movie.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you'd love it. It should be a classic. Yeah. In the sense that it takes an amazing horror trope and has some horror in it, but overall, it's just got just enough body, just enough horror, just enough. I don't know if it's old enough yet, 3 Miles, for it to be.
That's the one with what's his face,
the guy who plays
British
Scotty.
Guy. Simon
who
Pegg.
plays Scotty on Star Trek. Simon Pegg. Yeah, you know, he's always yelling at the guy that's sneezing acid. Fire right your nose, you bugger.
What's the one? And I know you should all beat me with a bag of oranges. What's the one with the fucking chainsaw? The guy with the chainsaw.
Oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No, not Texas. No. The hero has the chainsaw, and he's.
Oh yeah, Army of
Darkness.
Army of Darkness. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Evil Dead is a classic. It was the first one.
Yeah.
I would say Evil Dead was definitely the original classic of of comedy horror. Definitely.
Was it trying to be though?
I don't know, but I think it ended up that way, whether it wanted to be or not. But what I find fascinating is that its sequel became even more iconic with Bruce Campbell. Like, he did such a great job of just, I don't know, delivering on that sequel. It was just amazing. Yeah,
Lost Boys is not a comedy. It's a serious fucking drama.
No, that's a fucking comedy. That's a fucking what do you call it?
That's a cult teenage movie. I would not call Lost Boys a comedy.
That's a boy band comedy.
It's a boy band movie. It's not a boy band comedy. Peter Jackson made horror comedy.
Yeah, he did. Have you seen The Cabin?
No.
Oh, that'll blow your fucking
mind. Is that the one with the two hillbillies? And they? No,
that's Tucker versus the Evil Dead or whatever.
Yeah.
He did The Cabin where
I don't remember.
There's I'm Dead, but there's a The Cabin. How do you describe it? It's I don't know. I haven't seen it. It's a real good psychological horror. Like, it's really, really good.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's what it is.
Yeah, Dale versus
Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That was fucking hilarious.
There was another and what's really interesting about horror in general, I kind of feel like it's a real fun theme for any role-playing game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, whether it's modern fantasy, like sci-fi horror, or Alien, right?
I was just gonna say Alien.
Right? Alien is by far the very first idea of like what you would base sci-fi horror on. Like, what
I was going to say even the movie back in '79, I believe. I remember hearing about it as a kid, and we've talked about this. How it gave me nightmares for most of my life.
Yeah,
like that was.
It really wasn't that gory. It wasn't that gory.
It was that cerebral horror. And what was so weird, if I'm not mistaken, I could be, but if I'm not mistaken,
Jurassic Park.
That was I just spit my fucking tooth out.
Jurassic Park was horror for me. No one told me lizards could get that big. God darn it.
But wasn't Alien the first horror movie set in a sci-fi spaceship environment?
I don't know if it was the first.
I mean, you maybe have Forbidden Planet, maybe, but the T-Rex attack was pretty fucking scary.
I'm trying to think back because my 60s sci-fi horror genre is, the raptors are pretty scary, especially when you make them undead raptors chasing your party members through a jungle. It's lots of fun. I'm trying to think back at all my time watching sci-fi prior to Alien. The only other one that comes to mind is Event Horizon.
Was that before it? No, that was way after Alien.
Right. It's not sci-fi, but you remember In the Mouth of Madness?
Yeah.
There was that one. But you're right.
Did you ever see the cut scene from Event Horizon?
Yes,
it was so disturbing.
Yeah.
The studio wouldn't allow it in, and they cut it.
It's funny that you mentioned sci-fi horror. I'm having a hard time going back before Alien.
The only one that pops into my head, like I said, is Forbidden Planet from like 59 maybe or 60 something. I think there was a little bit of horror aspect to that because you never saw the monster because it was invisible. And it kind of had that feel to it, but I don't even know if you could quantify that as horror per se.
Well, it's interesting because
no, Alien. Extra. Oh man. Wow. That's out of the fucking blue.
Oh yeah, Extra's good.
I think it was before Alien.
Yeah, it might be. But what's funny is every time I go to look up sci-fi horror, it keeps coming back to Mary Shelley, so it's like they consider her to be the first true horror origin, and everything after that is postmodern horror interpretation.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know. Trying to think, because
and some people will argue Alien actually is horror. I think it is. I think most people would say it's horror before sci-fi.
I would agree with that.
It has all the elements of a horror movie. You don't see the monster; it's lurking around. Everything's dark. Everybody gets separated. It's the Wayland Yutani version of "Don't Go Alone into the Fucking Basement." But I don't know.
That was the one I was trying to think of. The Thing.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah,
but was that really sci-fi though? It wasn't set in the future or outer space.
Alien from another world, so it kind of fits the sci-fi genre. So, and there was the original black and white version of Alien, right? So
of Alien, you mean The Thing?
I mean The Thing. So The Thing, there was the 1950s version, I think, right? There was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Carpenter's The Thing was a remake of that.
Right. Yep. With Kurt Russell.
Yes.
Among others.
Now, Event Horizon was 1997.
Sam Neill.
The Fly, 1986.
Oh my God, The Fly scared the fuck out of me.
Yeah, that was a good one. 1985, The Reanimator, which I think is now it's more horror than sci-fi.
Okay.
The Thing was in 1982. Scanners, great horror.
Now see that I would consider comedy.
I don't know. Oh.
What about They Live?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978.
There you go.
A year before Alien.
Oh, The Blob.
Oh, I love The Blob. It comes from outer space.
It comes technically from outer space. Oh shit. Psycho. Psycho. Oh, that's not sci-fi. We're talking sci-fi.
Right. Well, we're trying to keep within sci-fi. Altered States.
That was.
I mean, you can link
good.
any horror to Stephen King genre, and you've got like a lot of just good hardcore genre. But I think Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien did a good job of really setting the groundwork for modern horror and sci-fi horror.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think they do a good job of doing that.
You know what kind of movies when I was growing up scared the absolute fucking bejesus out of me more than anything else?
What's that?
And it's funny that I actually said scared the bejesus out of me. It's all of the arachnophobia. Well, that's different. That's a psychological phobia.
I consider that a comedy horror. Actually.
Yes, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because being Jewish and not believing in any of this crap for some reason, like Exorcist,
even though rooted in your ancient history is the Golem.
Yes.
The Golem, right? Which is
He's right over here. You want to see him?
Yeah.
Come here, Mark. Come here. No, like Hellraiser, The Exorcist, all of that satanic hell shit.
Right.
Scared the fuck out of me when I was younger for no goddamn reason.
Okay. The Softonomicon brought up the quintessential movie that defined my love of monster horror. This is a good segue.
I've never heard of either of these.
So them, I haven't seen the Tingler, but if they like Thing, now I've got to look up Tingler and see what that is. But them was amazing. It was a nuclear horror film where, like, out in New Mexico, in the nuclear test site of New Mexico, ants got affected by radiation, became these giant ants that were secretly like stealing bodies and
the 50-foot ants.
Well, not that movie specifically, but it was called Them.
Okay.
And they colorized it about a decade ago, which I didn't like. I like it. I liked it in its black and white formula. I thought it was amazing. Them
me too.
Them is amazing because it does. To me, it felt like the first movie I ever watched where it took psychological tropes of the dangers of radiation and introduced me to the idea of monster horror, because the only other thing that ever introduced that to me was Godzilla. Okay. So the whole Godzilla kaiju universe became relevant to me as a kid. And then it was solidified in me as a kid after I saw Them. Because that came out, I think, in the late 40s or early 50s or something like that.
1954.
Yeah, 50. I knew it was either the late 40s or early 50s. Yeah. So,
all right, I'll have.
But
to
it was
watch
just,
that.
And it had good actors in it. Like, it had actors of the time in it. A lot of former World War II actors and stuff like that. So, once again, horror as it gets validated through these movies.
Hey, Dragon Painter, how are you doing?
It's like it's interesting to see how important horror is becoming to our real life culture, and maybe it's starting to get important to our gaming culture too. Because like I'm becoming more and more interested in horror and gaming in general.
Now, as in terms of our everyday culture, all you got to do is turn on the fucking news. I mean,
well, that's not horror. That's just day-to-day life.
Excellent. We're doing good. We're talking about scary things.
We're talking about scary teeth that won't stay in Brian's rotted mouth.
Okay, so monster horror.
Yes, yeah, Ravenloft is now Curse of Strahd.
Curse of Strahd.
So
I took them down, but I have Ravenloft. I have Ravenloft 2, and I bought the big coffin version of Strahd, which I have not opened yet.
I have over on the shelf a Ravenloft first series box set that came out in the late 80s.
What I have. Yeah, that's the one I have. Yeah,
it's got the little counters in it and like everything in it. It's so weird.
Yeah. Oh, Tingler's Vincent Price. Oh,
wow. The pendulum. Oh,
darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Holy shit!
Holy shit! Both my teeth are falling out.
Oh wow.
Oh, nice.
I'll give you $9 for it right now.
Yep.
Done and done.
Just get me Tracy Hickman's phone number and we'll call it even.
Okay, so monster horror. So
well, I think monster horror is by far the easiest transition into gaming.
Well, sure.
It's you can look at a lot of like Pathfinder material, D&D material. You can look at a lot of pre-generated RPG material. That monster horror is just like, really easy to put in there. But is the monster itself the horror, or is the origin of how the monster became the horror? You know what I mean? Like, what, is the real horror what made Godzilla? Is the real horror, what made, like, is Dr. Frankenstein the real horror and not Frankenstein?
I think that kind of goes for anybody. I mean, look at Jason Voorhees. He's just some douchebag in a gas station jumper and a hockey mask. But, when you hear about he drowned in a lake and blah, blah, then that's where the scary is.
But I like the idea of a horror being projected from something else. So you have the false horror and then the real horror.
Yeah.
Like, which I think to a certain degree is like the nascent origin of the big bad. The big bad comes from the idea of the horror spectacle to a certain degree. The Lich King, right? The great Lich King Vecna, the great demon god Orcus, or
Demogorgon.
The betrayer god that Matt introduces, Thorazum or whatever that god's name is, which is the god of ending things. He's basically into destroying all things and remaking them over and over again. So I mean, that's a terrifying god, and horrific outcomes, right?
What about now like occult horror? Okay, because so here, so I love Cthulhu mythos. Okay, I know Lovecraft was an anti-Semitic racist piece of shit. So we'll just get that out there right away.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
and valid and true, yeah.
Yeah, but the mythos,
fuck you, WoW lovers.
Yeah, but for some reason there is just something about.
I think to your point, the reason why the Lovecraftian mythos was, there's some truth to that as well. I think
really,
if you read some of the older biography stuff, it does get it weird. It's weird. He died
okay.
Yeah, it is worth reading some of his later stuff versus some of his younger stuff. I think the mystery of the H.P. Lovecraft mythos is that it all takes place in a time when you feel very vulnerable. Like, there's no technology, there's no, it's you, a pistol, a kerosene lamp, and your knowledge of some horror.
I would argue a little bit that the time period that it takes place in is when people are making the transition from the old world to the new world. I mean,
I think that was the intent.
Science is starting to take root. Industry is starting, is almost starting. So there is the open-mindedness to.
But I think it's that vulnerability of transition. You no longer trust the past and you're scared of the future.
Yeah.
So you're in this particular point in time that just feels even extra scary because you don't know what's coming and you don't know what's been. And you find yourself like, you find yourself in the midst of this entire horror mythos
Mm-hmm.
that leads to the idea of world order. You know, the idea that the world's run by cults and it's not really in your control. So, they exhume a lot of,
exhume. I love that word.
Yeah, they exude a lot of energy around the fact that, kind of the cultural shift that we're going through now. To your point, almost all of the modern horror that we're exposed to is either in the gaming space or limited to the reading space. Like,
I thought you were talking about what we're going through day to day now in the real world.
Well, yeah, but
because I got to be honest, right now I'm rooting for Cthulhu. I'm rooting for the Destroyer.
Have you seen the movie Nope yet?
Yes. Oh my God, that was
a good sci-fi modern horror.
That was,
and the way that was written, was amazing.
Can you see those effects?
Yeah. I think if you clap, it does confetti. I think.
Still like this one.
Come
on, now it's not working.
You gotta put your hands out so it can read. Yeah, there you go. Put them out. Oh, you broke it.
Lame. Hang on, let me restart my computer.
No, don't do that because the hamster's gonna fall asleep.
I know. No, it's funny though because in the lens in the lens of gaming, when you said horror when we first started talking about what it was to discuss, immediately what pops into my head is Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I just think that to your point, the period that it takes in, the psychological aspect of it, because that's something that's not touched upon really in a lot of movies. And I know that there are psychological
hard to convey that sometimes. It's hard. It's harder to convey.
It is. You know what? Strangely enough, what movie I got that from? A newer movie is Cloverfield.
To a certain degree,
like,
I would agree
what
with
would
that.
it feel like? You watch Godzilla and you're like, oh, it's a big monster stomping on Tokyo. If you were actually in fucking Manhattan and this shit's going on, I think that movie did a very good job of portraying like what you would feel like if you saw a fucking 50-story monster literally traipsing through your city. I got that. I'm not saying it wrote the book on it, but
right.
But I think to me that's what it is about Cthulhu, is that
I don't know
visceral psychological, like,
I don't know if you've seen it yet, but have you seen it? Came out a while ago. Get Out.
Yes. Wait, which one is that? Is that the one with the scissors, or that was his first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, Get Out was his first one. That was the one where he goes to the small town and to meet his. That was so terrifying to me to watch because it felt like a documentary. Like it felt visceral and it felt real and it felt purely psychological to me.
What was the one with the scissors? Was that Us? The one with the scissors?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I haven't seen, but I saw Get Out. I saw Nope. He's a
good writer.
Fucking masterful.
Well, and I think it begs the question: is it easier to do a psychological horror game versus a more traditional monster horror game, or a full body bloody horror? You know what I mean? Like, to me, like the psychological horror game feels easier because you can use theater of the mind more effectively, I think.
Well, when you say do you mean easier to run and put together? Or do you mean easier to achieve that level of angst and horror?
Run, put together, and probably get close to that angst of horror.
I would agree, because I think a monster, it's a game. It's like, oh, you see a big monster. All right, fine. I take out my sword.
I take out my +5
Yeah,
vorpal.
or it's gory. You're like, oh, that's gross. But if you're really good at the psychological stuff, and I think maybe that's also why I gravitate towards Cthulhu.
Yeah.
And it's really odd now that I think about it. As much as I'm drawn to that mythos, I have not played a lot of Cthulhu games. I think the only one
I've played a lot of Cthulhu. I always
the only one I played is the board game, is the new board game by Simon, Cthulhu Death May Die. I've never
played that yet, but I used to take Gangbusters and Cthulhu and mesh them together.
Yeah.
And have some fun with that. I guess that's what I love most about the Cthulhu lore and mythos, which we talk about all the time, right? Where, as we brought up with Shadowrun, they never could quite seem to tweak it the way the mechanics need to be, but the lore is really good. Cthulhu's kind of the same way. They got a great madness system and the lore is amazing, but they always seem to overcrunch it, make it hard to run sometimes. I think what I'm beginning to learn by playing Candela Obscura is that it's too easy to do the horror. Like sometimes the horror gets too redundant and you need to learn ways of pacing a game so that the horror starts small and builds to that crescendo that it's designed for, that sudden shock and awe of the horror output that just everybody's like, no, the alien bursting out of the chest, kind of vibe that we all know is a total jump scare that none of us have ever recovered from.
Did you? I'm sure you know this, but did you know the cast had no clue that was going to happen?
Yep, that's why it was so real.
Yeah,
like it was so terrifying.
Everybody was just so fucking shocked. Nobody knew it was going to happen except for John Hurt, John Hurt.
Yeah, I think it was John Hurt. When they interviewed Sigourney Weaver during the making of Alien, they talked about how they actually were all afraid that he was actually sick, that there was something wrong with him.
Yeah,
because it wasn't done that way in the script.
Yeah,
they were supposed to, I think, if I recall, they were supposed to put him on a gurney and take him to the medical lab. And then it was supposed to be like a strange kind of distant shot of him exploding and the creature.
Oh, that out. I didn't know.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
All I knew is that they were not made aware of what was going on.
Right. So in the script, I believe they talked about him having a medical emergency with no description.
Oh, so they really
didn't know what the intent of the scene was. So that when you see the look on their faces, I don't think that's acting. No, I think that's recognition and horror at the same time.
In fact, once you know this, if you didn't know this, go back and watch the movie and just look at their faces. And there's a couple like glances between the one actress. I don't know her name. I forgot her name. But she really was like freaked out. You could tell like she's looking at the other actors like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. But that, once again, it's interesting that you can play Aliens as an RPG now. It's a solid RPG system. Yeah. So as I've been studying and trying to get my hands around The Walking Dead, they use a fear system or a threat system. So 3 Miles Down's reference to Zombicide building the stress horror factor and using stress to create the anxiety and the idea of horror. Walking Dead very much does that too. Their system does that very well. It's like you could end up playing for 3 hours where the threat level is steadily climbing, and based on threat, your dice rolls that you were doing earlier seemed easy. But now that the threat level's so high, you're under so much stress, something as easy as crawling through a window becomes almost impossible because of the horror aspect of the zombies coming at you, or the marauders shooting at you while the zombies are coming at you, or the freshly bitten friend forcing you to run away as they're being consumed by zombies and the marauders are shooting at you. You know what I mean? It's like that steady threat level climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs.
Yeah.
So that if you're in the red threat, like if you're an extreme threat and all you're trying to do is, like, let's say, do a athletics check for reference perspective, if it had an applied DC at a low threat, it would have been a 12. But now that you're in a higher degree of threat, it's now like a 26 or 27.
That sounds like they did a good job of pulling in what Simon does with Zombicide and Cthulhu Death May Die, where the game mechanics itself just, it's like, oh, if it's an if then thing. If this happens, then spawn.
Right,
and like I said, before you know it, they really, to 3 Miles' point, I don't even know that. No, I'm not even going to go there. I totally agree with that statement. It is that it builds that stress very well into the stereotypical, zombie story. Like, oh, we're okay. Oh, there's a few more. And then before you know it, it's like, well, fuck. Now we're trapped and there's 20 minis, on the board. And it really does a great job of that. It sounds like
every now and then you come across a diamond in the rough that just surprises you.
Such
I would. There was a movie me and Callista watched over the weekend called A Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse.
Never heard of it.
It's amazing. It's got to be one of the most amazing things I've ever watched. It was a comedy zombie flick that was just an absolute joy to watch. It was amazing to watch. It came out during the same period as what I call the Judd Apatow production era. That kind of comedy.
Okay.
So it's very generational. And it's very much
Scouts Guide. Oh, Scouts versus Zombie. Scouts Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse.
Yeah. I think it came out in 2014, 2015. It was the first movie that the kid that did did Player One Ready.
Ready Player One. Oh yeah, Ty Sheridan. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's familiar.
It's a fun movie. If you
like awesome. Fun. Now I got my movie list for the weekend. I got nothing to do this weekend. It's gonna rain all weekend, and now I got a whole shitload of movies. Thank you guys.
Oh my god, that's funny.
That's like Zombieland.
The first one. Second one was terrible.
Yeah,
second one was a money grab. The first one felt like a beginning, middle, and ending to me.
Yes.
And it felt like it played very well into the idea that we all have about the hopes of a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
That you could survive it. And if you did, you would just shack up at, Bill Murray's house and everything would be fine. And you only met good-looking hot people on the road.
Absolutely.
You never met ugly people.
Well, because they can't run fast and they were all eaten.
And I still love the fact that Zombieland played off the idea of the mad cow disease. So it took a good chunk of its horror from the fact that mad cow disease is a real thing. Uh-huh. And mad cow disease is something that makes your brain sick. So, more importantly, thinking about Zombieland.
Wait, where are you? Are you Michigan or Ohio? I forgot. I got nothing to do this weekend. I hop in the car.
Yeah, you're a Bronco, right? You have that Ford
Bronco.
Man.
Yeah. I have to stop.
I think just drive.
Colorado.
That's a hike.
17 hours. No big deal.
Yeah, that's a hike.
It'll only take me 7 tanks of gas to get there. All I do is sit in traffic in Chicago. You know what that car gets for me in the city of Chicago? Like driving to and from school? It's like fucking 12 miles to the gallon.
I think
I'm part of the problem.
One of our more modern, you're a horror show. One of the more modern perspectives is it a slow white Bronco?
You know my name, damn it! Oh, say again.
I found Last of Us terrifying.
I don't know if I would use the word. I didn't find it terrifying. I enjoyed it immensely.
I enjoyed it, and I found it terrifying because it felt so real. It felt like it was not fiction. You know what I mean? Like they based the story on the game, and the game based the story on real science.
Yes, that.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
That real science of the idea that a fungus can grow into an ant's body and take over that ant's neurological system.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And climate change, whether it's man-made or not, is having an effect on fungus growth.
And we have no cures for fungus.
Yeah.
Okay,
you're right. I take it back in that regard. I thought you meant the on-screen horror of like, bleh.
Yeah, and I would agree with my brother.
Right.
I mean, the show was very low fantasy compared to the game, which even made it more terrifying because that whole, like, I go back and I watch that first episode whenever I want to get inspired to write and like work on my games. The storytelling in that first episode was amazing to me. That creepy next door neighbor interaction, that single scene where the girl is standing there looking down at the kitchen floor at the old lady eating the old man, you know, or no, the old man's been bit and the lady's over on the other side eating the wood, you know, eating the caretaker or the daughter, the older daughter, right? And it's silent. There's no noise. It's just silence and the dog yelping and running away. That whole lead up to that point of sheer terror, that's a classic. Now
I will agree with you in that regard. In terms of when you really start thinking about that story, it is truly fucking.
And then the scene where they're running through the town, that there were so many RPG, like TTRPG moments in that first episode that it made me feel so good about the gaming culture in general, whether it be console, PC, or tabletop, because there's so many elements in it that could be equally interpreted by all the different genres of the interpretation of gaming. You know, the isolated horror scene, right? And then they come to rescue her. And then you have that pursuit through the chaos that's unfolding around you, that's building up until the jet crashes down and sends everything into a blackout scene. And then they're racing away through the town and they're trying to get away. They get separated, horror and zombies and everything is like unfolding around them, you know? And then the end of the scene is the military hero, the father's desperation holding the daughter, and that classic cliffhanger ending of the gunshot crack. You know, and darkness. You know, it's just like there were so many genres playing out in that first episode. To see it all come together like that was just so inspiring for me. That first episode is always a classic for me to get my heart pumping and get my writing just up and running and ready to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. You remember the third episode with Nick Offerman?
Yes.
That was one of the best episodes of any show that I think I've ever seen in my life.
And what makes that episode so horrifying to me is the expectation of hope becoming failure.
Yeah.
But in amidst that death of hope, that opportunity for stoicism to be presented very differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't a survivalist in the traditional sense.
He was forced into it.
He was forced into it because he probably thought it was a hobby, while also really enjoying the idea of it actually happening, which is what I think most people feel like a lot of the ways.
Yeah.
But he was a very stoic individual who was also very empathetic.
Yeah.
And he had this amazing relationship with a desperate survivor that in his own mind he should not allow into his life.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the collapse of civilization flourishes this amazing love for two people.
Yeah. It was,
you know,
I thought it was just,
and then
I was actually in tears.
Visited upon by outsiders in different ways. The way the Marauders try to take it away through violence and physical attack on their sanctuary. The smugglers, you know, the two main protagonists that insert themselves into their lives. But at the end of the timeline, at the end of the survival timeline, it's two people desperately in love with each other who can't live without each other.
Yeah.
But yet they leave behind enough hope for anyone who comes along to take all that with them and try to do better and try to do something with that little bit of hope that was left behind. And it just feels so conclusive at the end. Like at the end of episode 3 and at the end of episode 1, I didn't see how they could top either of that in the series. Like it, and that's until we got to the cannibals. When they did the cannibals, when Ellie gets rescued, that was that visceral, that moment that he's looking at the guy who's begging for his life, and you look at his face. You know, what's the main protagonist name in that? Oh my God, I'm drawing him. It was Ellie's the girl. I can't think of his name right now. It's killing
you gave me a brain fart,
right? But he takes out his blade. And Cole, he takes Pedro Pascal's character. He takes out his blade with no thought. There's no thought in his face. There's no empathy. There's no comprehension of compassion, emotion. He just takes out his blade, jams it into the guy's chest, and then again and again, then into his head, and again and again. That whole scene of him killing that person. There's no emotion in the process. But then when you cut, spoilers, when you cut to the final episode where he's killing that one leader of the Fireflies because she wanted to kill Ellie to get all of her blood, it's pure emotion.
Yeah.
It's pure visceral emotion. He's killing hope. He's killing the future of mankind because he loves Ellie so much.
Yeah.
He's not willing to give up the safety of humanity. To me, there's so many elements of psychological horror, physical horror, modern horror, humanity horror in that series. I don't know how they can top that. I don't know how they can top it.
The writing is really absolutely phenomenal on that show. Wait, what?
And I'm
sorry. Like, we'll go back to idiot humor. Oh, my teeth are falling out. No, this is. I mean, there are so many different aspects of horror, and probably so many different definitions of horror. You know, like again, body horror to me is not horror. My definition of horror is something that makes you truly feel afraid. Body horror disgusts me. It's revulsion. Doesn't make me afraid.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel like it disgusts me. I just feel like
it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, it's just not interesting to me because anyone can do that. The psychology behind why someone's doing that, I think, is far more interesting than, you know, the outcome of them doing that. You know, which is why that, you know, that classic scene of, you know, the door opening and there's 5 terrified people as the monster goes in. And then as the monster comes out, there's 5 dead people just strewn on the floor where you can't really make anything out. You just happen to believe they're dead. And the monster just casually walks out and is now walking slowly towards the next room. And in that next room, the people are just quietly living their lives, not knowing that this monster is about to visit them in turn. You know, Scream. I think Scream is a great modern interpretation of small town horror.
Yeah.
You know, it really does a good job with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say that whenever I need to be inspired, whenever I feel like I need to write and I've got a campaign to organize for, I find myself picking these items off of the library shelf of movies and series. And, you know, first season of Stranger Things. Great, inspiring season.
That scared. I think I told you when I first saw that, for some dumb fuck reason, I decided, oh, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll start watching Stranger Things. Everybody, my wife was asleep. My son was asleep. Dog's upstairs. And I'm watching it. And I'm scared shitless. And by the time I got halfway through the second episode, I'm like, fuck this. I paused it, went upstairs.
Oh, Deliverance is definitely body horror.
Got the dog out of bed, brought him downstairs with me, and continued watching Stranger Things. Scared the shit out of me. No,
Deliverance is definitely horror.
Horror
because it's not fiction.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, that could be an aspect too. How realistic is it? You know, a giant monster going through New York. Yeah, I mean, you could do a really good job making it scary, but still a giant monster stomping on New York, right?
Yeah.
Walking Dead, it's a hard sell for that zombie story. They Live, not such a fucking hard sell.
No, especially since it kind of like it really creeps into the conspiracy mindset of certain horror genres as well, and it gets you there. So, holy shit, we did it again, Bri.
This was an awesome conversation. I think we should keep going until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll watch Them or Tingler or one of these monster movies.
Yeah, the Reanimator.
The Reanimator. Hellraiser
Oh my goodness.
used to always scare the shit out of me. Pinhead.
Right?
Again, because it's a guy with nails in his head from hell.
I know.
Like that shit, that scares the fuck out of me. Oh my God. You know what was the worst scene? We're not stopping, by the way. You know what was the worst scene for me in that movie, in Hellraiser? When what's-her-face, what was her name? Julia?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
See, it did it. See, you put your thumb up.
Oh, yeah, right.
There it goes.
Hellraiser!
I think it's so stupid.
Is when she had no skin. She's walking around with just musculature and blood, and because it was so real. Like that was so fucking scary.
This one,
oh my God,
is how we missed that one. I'm not sure, but that one to this day, I can't watch it all the way through. And they rebooted it recently with Russell Crowe. I think was it Russ? No,
no, you're thinking of he did do one, The Pope's Exorcist.
Yes,
which was actually very good.
Was it?
It was very good. It's worth a watch.
Because it felt like it was just a reboot of The Exorcist.
There was a little more to it than The Exorcist, but they did reboot The Exorcist.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, I remember like the 80s, we had like 10 years of just horror after horror after horror.
Oh, it was Exorcist, Elm Street, Halloween, Friday the 13th, 1 through 412.
The Omen, remember that one?
The Omen, yes.
That was fucking scary.
Question, what's the best reboot of a horror? I'd have to think about that. Now, are you talking about a sequel or a reboot?
Probably a reboot.
Yeah.
And horror doesn't get rebooted all that often.
No.
Either.
No. Because if they suck, they really suck. And reboot from an old
movie.
Okay. Well,
I'm okay with the reboot of Halloween, even though it was technically a sequel. They had done a reboot of the retelling of the story, so it was like a reboot sequel. It was kind of weird the way they did it.
Okay.
I would also say, there was one that I watched recently. Technically, The Thing is a reboot.
I was just
of the black and white one, right?
Yeah, I was just to say The Thing.
Yeah, The Thing definitely fits that notion. But they rebooted The Thing again. There's a third reboot of The Thing.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I forget what it's called, but yeah,
I didn't know that.
I'll look it up.
I've got an Exorcist story too. You think I'm making this shit up? I'm not. For some dumb reason, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I remember my parents went out, and my brother and I, who's 4 years younger, we had a babysitter, and she was watching, or she let us watch, or it was on TV and she didn't turn it off, whatever, The Exorcist. And I'm 8. And for the next 5 years of my life, I was scared shitless because I thought that every child, when they turned 13, went through this demonic possession. As part of turning 13. It was like a hellish bar mitzvah. And I'm like, oh shit. Once my bed starts floating, man, fuck. But seriously, who lets an 8-year-old watch The Exorcist? That one too scarred me for life. That's probably why I've always had this fear of like satanic horror.
Yeah.
Even though I don't believe in it.
Or it could also be your interest in satanic horror.
Maybe.
We all lived through the 80s scare of, D&D, demon worship and,
yeah.
I know one we didn't mention, which I think has a place in history. The Blair Witch Project.
What was that a reboot of?
No, not a reboot. I'm just saying as a horror film.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So here's my take on that movie in under 20 seconds. Really good idea for the first 5 minutes. Boring as fuck and played through the rest of the movie. Last 2 minutes in that creepy house scared the absolute shit out of me to the point that I almost left and went to like a bowling alley.
Yeah, my brother brings up a good point. I think the trouble with like Cloverfield, Blair Witch Project, when you go with that filming style, if you're prone towards motion sickness, you're going to struggle to watch it.
Yeah. Well, but I do think that does add a different perspective, especially for Cloverfield. I think they do a really good job.
But I think you could probably do that method a little bit more refined. I don't think you need to shake the fucking camera that much.
No. Well, that was before the days of motion. What do you call it?
Yeah. Did you watch the so-called Cloverfield sequel or prequel or whatever they called it, Cloverfield Lane or whatever it was? I actually thought that was okay. I thought it was an interesting take on survival horror. You know, I think it played out well.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I think that's what always intrigued. But
I'm not saying that. I mean, anything out in the woods is going to be scary, and I think there was this constant level of fear. But I'm telling you, what scared the piss out of me was that end scene. Yeah. The whole thing was in the woods, right? Except for the end when there was this abandoned fucking house and they went into the basement, and it was about a minute and a half of the whole movie. I got so terrified. And I think the reason is because all of a sudden you went from nature to this structure. Okay. So you're potentially dealing with a natural monster, which should fucking be scary. But then you're in another situation where, you know, it could be some fucking serial killer who's torturing and maiming people in this basement tied up. You know what I mean? And then it becomes real. And that's why when I saw that end scene, when they went into that basement, I fucking lost it. That was
and I think what made the whole movie pretty amazing is that end scene forces you to revisit the gap in between the beginning and the end. Like when you think about everything they went through to get to that ending, once they're at the ending, suddenly all of their dismissive tone and all their dismissive, oh, nothing's wrong, this is just somebody messing with us. I'm sure they're like that constant sense that none of this is real or none of this is a real threat. And then suddenly you're inserted into a very tropey ending. That's a tropey ending.
Absolutely.
But it's done so well leading up to it. You're willing to forgive all of that.
Yeah.
Just to have that amazing visceral, why are they staying? Why aren't they running? What the, you're just like covering up as it happens. It's
I mean, crazy. that physically affected me. Like I gotta go.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I gotta go, I gotta get kids home.
Well, that's a horror story right there.
It writes itself.
All
right, Brian.
Awesome. This is an awesome conversation.
It was.
Before I forget, happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you for joining
happy
us.
Halloween.
Have a wonderful, safe Halloween. Are we taking next week off? No, we're not. But that's after Halloween.
I don't think so.
No, we'll be here next week, but that's after Halloween. So anyway,
I think we're trying to get the Marsman on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they were trying to get the Marsman on for next week.
Right. That may happen. Yes. Okay. So anyways, have a happy, safe Halloween.
Yep.
And you can find me as always at rpgandco.com. I'm looking at your brother's comment. I'm doing two things.
I do have a Sunday stream that will be coming up this weekend, Fool's Errand. I then have a Monday stream. Our Tuesday stream is taking Tuesday night off because it's Halloween. And then me and Brian meet usually every Thursday, although we're coming up on our holiday break. So normally you can find me on Twitch or on the YouTubes. If you go over to TTRPG Academy Twitch, you can find all my socials and connections over there. And I'm usually streaming Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night with Brian. So
cool. So find me at RPG&Co on Instagram. That's the best place to reach me. DM me anytime. I love to just shoot the shit. Nice to meet you too. By the way, what is your real name? Because
Jeremiah.
I can't even pronounce Vika Darker Draco.
His real name is Jeremiah.
Jeremiah. Okay.
Yep.
Nice to meet you too. Hopefully you will join us more often.
He calls my brother because he used the term rad.
Rad, wicked. That's wicked awesome. Oh my God. Speaking of, I heard this vampire story down there in the North End. There was fucking wicked awesome.
I was down there in the holler.
Yeah. Also, check out playrpgandco.com. That is the .com. A lot of cool, I think it's cool. It's my apparel. It's a lot of cool digital content, a lot of it from Jason. So check that out. And
if you're looking for that professional pay-to-play game, head on over to rpgclub.net. Got lots of events available. I've got a one-shot that's up there. I've got 2 campaigns that are gradually beginning to fill up. So go check us out over there. So hey, Brian,
let me hold on. Let me know.
What?
I still want to play in one of your one-shots, and I want to play in one of your Candela games. So let me know when you can slot me.
Okay.
Right.
TPK.
Tell a story.
Play a game.
And be horrible to people.
Fucking hate you. Love it.